David Goggins is one of the hardest men on the planet. His discipline is unreal and he's figured out what works best for him. But today, I want to break down his daily routine through the lens of someone who's been a marathon runner, a bodybuilder, a strongman, physically experienced everything there is to offer, and someone with a master's degree in exercise physiology. Now, this is not to criticize Goggins at all because he's figured out what's worked for him. This is to help you build a daily routine that actually fits your goals and your life. We're going to pull the bits that work really well, maybe improve on some of the bits that aren't sustainable for everyday people, and give you something to walk away with that's going to make your life better. I've pushed my body in a lot of different directions. I've cut weight for bodybuilding, run marathons, set strongman world records, and studied the physiology behind it all. So when I look at routines like Goggins, I'm not here to judge. I'm here to translate what works for him into something that the average person can apply. So, David Goggins, he wakes up at a crazy time. He allegedly wakes up at around 3 or 4 a.m. and that seems to work for him. He gets his day started before the sun comes up. That's Goggins, that's Jocko Willink. It's a lot of hardcore people say that this is mandatory. The science behind our circadian rhythm tells us that waking up early goes against our natural biology. This is because one of the main regulators of your circadian rhythm is sunlight. And of course, there's no sunlight at 3 a.m. If you're somewhere like Canada or you're on the north side of the northern hemisphere, you might not have sunlight until 7 or 7:30 a.m. And that's why for us folks in the northern side of the northern hemisphere, it's so much easier to get up early in the summer. Sunlight hits your eyes, and that blue light that keeps you awake at night is actually a great thing in the morning because it alerts you to wake up. So if you are waking up that early, or you're a shift worker who needs to be alert, your body just doesn't get the signal that it needs to fully switch on. There is a hack around this, and that is with intentional blue light exposure. There's a product here that I just found called a luminette light, which just blasts blue light at you. This is going to signal to your body that the sun is up and you're ready to go, just the same as when you're looking at your phone and you haven't blocked blue light in the evening, and that inhibits your ability to sleep well. But for most people, the best thing you can do is sleep 8 to 9 hours. Your sleep hygiene should absolutely be your number one priority. Why is this? Well, less than 6 hours of sleep, according to the research, shows substantial decreases in strength, in muscle gain, and central nervous system recovery. If you get 8 to 9 hours, you're going to have an optimal hormonal balance, or your sleep will promote an optimal hormonal balance, and better neural recovery. If your hormones are good, your neural recovery is good, your whole body will generally follow. Void of any chronic conditions or illnesses, this is a really good foundation to progress physically and to be productive today. So Goggins wakes up at 3 or 4, which I would have much less to say about if he went to bed at 7 or 8, but he reportedly only sleeps about 5 hours of night while doing insane volumes of training. Now, for his mindset, that clearly works. A lot of what he talks about is callousing your brain to be able to handle anything. Now, it might work for your brain and for your mindset if you do this over time, but it will not work for your strength, it will not work for your muscle building, or it will not work for your central nervous system. The central nervous system recovery that happens during deep sleep is unmatched. And if you're trying to get stronger, sacrificing sleep is like trying to save time by skipping gas on a road trip, which obviously the car will eventually stop. And in this case, the car is your nervous system. You only have so much firepower before you burn out without adequate rest and sleep. Now, if you do have to sleep shorter amounts, there are several sleep hygiene things that you can do to improve your sleep quality. Things like a cool room temperature, somewhere between 66 and 69 degrees Fahrenheit, a 100% dark room with blackout curtains completely across every window, things like an air purifier to stop any sort of abnormalities, and sleep tracking, sleep studies to see, do you need a CPAP machine? How are you sleeping generally? Creating a consistent routine, having your phone in the bedroom. I could go on and on. There's a variety of things you can do that less sleep can actually still work reasonably well, but really not as good as a full night's rest. One of the ways that you know if you are ready to train is heart rate variability, and another is resting heart rate. These are not that difficult to track. Any Apple Watch or Whoop or 8 Sleep or any sort of biometric device will read this for you. And this is one of the best ways to gauge whether you are ready or not in a numerical, inarguable sense. When you're overtrained, your heart rate variability goes down because this is a representation that your body is less responsive to changes in environment and emotion. Of course, your resting heart rate goes up when your body's stressed out because it's always kind of ready to go. These signals are pretty cheap to obtain, very reliable, and very easy to understand. So if you want to take anything from Goggins, take the mindset of being ready for anything that life throws at you, but monitor your readiness so that you don't crash out. Now, after Goggins wakes up at about 3 or 4, he reportedly does about a half an hour warm up. For low intensity cardio, to me, warming up isn't really necessary. Now, in this case, he's warming up for about a 12-mile run. The best thing that you can do for warm up is a lower intensity version of the activity you're about to do. If you're already doing low intensity activity, I would say for the most part, get stuck into it. If you're doing anything moderate or high intensity, you have an injury history, you have something specifically you're working on, these are different cases, and that's fine. But my best advice would be do the activity that you plan on doing at a lower intensity, feeling if there's anything that feels strange, and if it does, then attack that individually and spend the time specifically on that day with what's not lining up. You can't prehab everything, you can't stretch everything, or else you would be absolutely out to lunch, and you would be spending so much time warming up and stretching and mobilizing, etc. So a lower intensity version of jogging, which he's getting ready to do, would be simply walking. But look, for Goggins, of course that's fine. But for most people, the 30 minutes that he spends warming up after getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning, that would be better spent sleeping. Now again, if you feel a restriction after you start to warm up, doing low intensity exercise, address that. Otherwise, the simpler you keep it, the better. Now, Goggins does a ton of cardio, multiple runs, multiple rides for several hours a day, which is perfect for his goal of ultra endurance. But for most people, your goal is not to run an ultra marathon. Your goal is to be strong, to be fit, to be healthy, to live a long time, to have energy. And those goals aren't really aligned with being an ultra marathon runner. In fact, even myself at 220 pounds running marathons, I can't think of a time in my life when I had less energy and I was more apt to try to sleep in the afternoon than when I was running, because I was just churning and churning and churning without getting the proper recovery. And honestly, I just wasn't built for it, obviously. But if your goal is strength, muscle, health, longevity, that much cardio will not really help you as much as you might think. That low intensity cardio for a long period of time shifts your muscle fiber profile in your type 2 fibers. Now, type 2 are the most explosive fibers in your body, but they can be shifted metabolically to type 2A fibers. This shift means that you're inherently less powerful, you are less strong. Sure, you have more endurance capacity, but as we age, that's the first thing that you lose is your power. Now, also training your power is going to be more muscle retentive than training your aerobic system. Now, to be clear, you can't switch from slow twitch fibers to fast twitch. That's not possible, but your fast twitch fibers can become more endurance based or more fast twitch depending on how you train. If you want to lift heavy, build muscle, be explosive, or stop yourself from falling when you're elderly, those fast twitch fibers are going to be the first things that you want to try to retain when you're training. This is not to say that you shouldn't do cardio. In fact, I think cardio is severely underdone by a lot of people, but I don't believe that it's underdone in volume in most cases of people who try to take care of themselves. I think it's underdone in intensity. The HIIT protocol, specifically Tabata, 20 seconds on and 10 seconds off, where you're sprinting all out, repeated 8 times, has shown substantial increases in VO2 max, initially exhibited by Dr. Izumi Tabata, finding out how the Japanese speed skating team could improve their VO2 max the fastest. And this was not time constraint, this was not equipment constraint, it was nothing other than we have Olympic athletes, we need to improve them, and that was the best protocol of a variety that you tried. There's another researcher out of the University of Texas named Dr. Edward Coyle. And Dr. Coyle has studies on 4-second sprints. Basically, get to your peak power and then totally shut it off. And that is 1 round. You do several of these rounds and he's shown aerobic benefit to that, not because you're training your heart and your lungs, but because you're training the enzymatic systems locally in your muscles to soak up more oxygen from your bloodstream. You upregulate the enzymes to pull oxygen in, building back the oxygen debt that you create from sprinting all out. And we upregulate the enzymes. Naturally, you're better at offloading oxygen, which is fantastic, and that will result in aerobic improvements. Now, I say this because nobody watching this channel has time for hours and hours of cardio a day. And if you do, you definitely don't want to, or you probably wouldn't be listening to me. But cardio, to me, is still critical for lifespan. And when I think of the 2 sides of training, cardio is lifespan, and resistance training is health span. It's a gross oversimplification, but it is a reasonable way to think of it. And the good news is HIIT training is insanely effective. 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 8 times around feels absolutely horrendous, but it's only a few minutes. But these 4-second sprints can dramatically improve your aerobic fitness, and you never get those extremely uncomfortable feelings of dyspnea or breathlessness that we really want to avoid, not physically, but mentally. There's no more uncomfortable feeling than not being able to get enough air in your lungs, which is actually, you want to get air out of your lungs because it's driven by CO2, but that's a topic for another video. Now, I worked with Dr. Edward Coyle briefly, and I broke his max power output record on his bike by a gross magnitude, much to the dismay of greatness. In terms of recovery, Goggins does contrast hot and cold showers, and there is some evidence there. If you expand and contract vessels, of course, you're going to be having this passive movement of fluid, but if you're limited on time, I think you can skip the cold. And also, if you don't like doing it, you can skip the cold. And if you don't want to waste time, even if you have time, you can skip the colds. After your workout, heat alone, whether it's a sauna, a hot bath, a hot shower, anything to raise your body temperature is going to do a couple of things for you. It's going to improve your blood flow, and blood flow is how we get nutrients. And ice baths and cold stuff cuts off the blood flow, brings all the blood into your digestive system and your organs to protect them, and so we're actually losing nutrients, which makes very little sense if you're trying to muscularly recover, which is shown time and time again, the evidence that it's not useful. But hot will give you more nutrients, more blood flow. It also stimulates heat shock proteins, which help with recovery. It also gives a cardiovascular benefit. If you sit in a sauna for 20 minutes and your heart rate is at 110 because your body is trying to cool itself down, and that requires work and energy, that's the same thing as doing zone 2 cardio for your heart and your lungs. It's not going to help the muscular side, but your 4-second sprints help the muscular side. Hanging out in a hot tub, hanging out in a sauna can absolutely help your cardiovascular system in a much smaller, less potent way. But nonetheless, we're going to take our cardio wins. But remember, when it comes to recovery, the priority list goes like this. 1 is sleep, far and away. 2 is hydration and nutrition. 3 is general daily movement. 4, if you want one sexy evidence-based tool, it would be 15 minutes of red light therapy per day. The more I look into red light, the more I am surprised at how effective it is in improving performance and recovery. Now let's talk nutrition. Goggins has his Goggins style exact nutrition, exact meals, focuses on high protein, focuses on complex carbohydrates, and really eats basically out of any standard textbook, how should you eat, that's how he eats. Lean proteins, complex carbohydrates, a little bit of vegetables. But sometimes that's difficult. If you're living in the everyday world, it becomes impossible to prep every single meal you have and to get that in. So here are 6 nutrition rules I have to help you in your day-to-day life get the food that you need to be strong, fit, healthy, and have energy. Number 1 is to habitualize your meals. So you don't necessarily need to prep them all, but have a standard set of meals that say this is the protein, fat, carbs, and they're reasonable quality. These are the options I have to choose from. For me, I've got, say, Monster Mash. I've got 3 or 4 options for dinner. I've got options for shakes that all fit the macros that I need. And for me, it's a certain number of protein, carbs, and fat. And you can figure that out for yourself, but habitualize those meals and have several options for habitual meals that you know this works for my goals. Just as important, have backup protein sources. Focus on backup protein because carbs and fat, you will not have an issue finding them. We'll talk about that in a second. Number 3 is choose real food anywhere you can. And when you can choose real food, that's great. And it also gives you the pass when you can't choose real food to take your supplements. Number 4 is never compromise on your protein. A bowl of pasta is not a meal. A bowl of rice is not a meal. A bag of popcorn is not a meal. Might have carbs, might have fat. That's not a meal. Your protein has to form the basis. And the number 1 thing you should think is how many grams of protein do I need per meal? And if you are a 200-pound man, you need 200 grams of protein per day, give or take. Let's call it 200. If you eat 3 times a day, that's 66.67 grams of protein per day. Per meal, sorry. So maybe you need to up that to 4 or 5 meals. And if you have 5 meals a day at 200 pounds, you need 40 grams of protein in each meal. If you have a 60 gram of protein shake in the morning or in the evening, now we've got 3 full food meals or 4 full food meals. That would sit anywhere between 30 and 40 grams of protein, which is very, very easy because you had 1 shake. Simple as that. Number 5. Pair bad carbs with fat or protein to lower the glycemic load. There's nothing wrong with eating candy and filling out carbohydrates that way, especially and particularly if you pair it with something else. Every food has a glycemic index, And that glycemic index is treated as though foods are individual, but as soon as it hits your stomach, that mixes together. So if I had candy and peanut butter, that candy, the glycemic index has changed dramatically because it's mixed with the peanut butter, which is extremely slow digesting in your stomach. So you're not going to have this big spike in blood sugar that's going to result in fat storage and systemic inflammation or impaired recovery, all of that. And that's where I say, prioritize your protein because you can find carbs anywhere. And if you're eating those carbs with your protein, okay, cool. It might not be the best thing in the world, but it's not the end of the world. And number 6, bad fats are worse than bad carbs. Bad carbs, your fructose corn syrups, your sugars, your processed and refined things, okay, fine. Honestly, I don't think it's the end of the world because all we're talking about is, in the end, glucose molecules. And if you can blunt that digestion through having some other harder to digest foods in your stomach, we are getting a thumbs up. Bad fats. Things like trans fats, fried foods, it is never going to be useful for you. The effect it has on you systemically is horrendous. And by the way, bad fats, we're not talking dairy fats. Dairy saturated fats are in their own category. That's something else to talk about in a different video. But dairy saturated fats are fine. Meat saturated fats are fine. Trans fats, fried foods, they are the worst things you could have and should be avoided at all costs, to the point where I would recommend, if you had the option of eating a fried food or skipping a meal, skip the meal. Fasting, you're not gonna die. Just don't eat. You will survive. In the Western world, we're cool. Yeah, skip a meal, skip a day of eating. You're fine. Focus on good protein first, then good carbs, then good fats. So really, all I'm trying to say is you don't need to eat like Goggins or eat like a bodybuilder to look good and feel good. You just need consistency, and consistency in the right categories. I hope that one helped you. Goggins does things in the afternoon to reset his central nervous system, and he says this is a great time for him to spend time with his family and just unwind from the day. Now, when we talk about getting strong, strength is a central nervous system skill. And I'm talking about strength because I assume virtually everyone watching this wants to be strong in some way or another. If you're stressed, you're sore, you're overworked, you're anxious, you're depressed, I don't mean stressed as in like you feel stressed, but if your body is stressed, you will go into fight or flight. And fight or flight basically means that your systemic inflammation rises, your cortisol rises as well. Now, the biggest marker and the most obvious marker of systemic inflammation, if you ever want this tested, is your C-reactive protein. And one thing that's particularly notable is your C-reactive protein compared to your cortisol levels. Believe it or not, cortisol is actually anti-inflammatory under normal conditions, but if you are stressed, your C-reactive protein will be high, indicating high systemic inflammation, and your cortisol will be high, but your high cortisol is not reducing your systemic inflammation. It's not enough to overcome that. When that's the case, your ability to recover, build muscle, get stronger, or if you're aerobically focused, your ability to run further will drop. Your body follows the mind. And no, not just emotionally, because you feel like you can't do something. Physiologically, there are substantial changes when your body is not doing well or your mind is not doing well that will physiologically change to make you more or less physically prepared for what you might have to do or recover from. And yes, part of your routine should absolutely be mental recovery. To me, anything that makes you happy, relaxed, and at peace and live in the moment fits in mental recovery. Now, here are 3 habits from Goggins that you should keep but modify slightly. There are a lot of great things that he does, and here are a few. Number 1, his daily routine is consistent. This works because humans are creatures of habit, hormonally and mentally. I would modify what he does, of course, by sleeping 8 to 9 hours, ideally something like 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. I have heard and seen small sample sizes of research saying that the more sleep you get before 12 o'clock at night, the better off you are and the higher quality that sleep allegedly is. I don't know how much I buy that, and if any of you guys have work schedules that don't permit you to sleep 8 to 9 hours and get up and go to bed at these times, I don't think you need to put a whole lot of weight behind it. In fact, there's research that shows that if your sleep at night is shorter and you make up that debt by having a nap in the afternoon, that largely does the same thing as sleeping longer. It's marginal differences at most. So get that good quality sleep in, the good duration of sleep in as well, and that will be a very good thing. But create the habit. If you have to nap every day because you sleep very little because you have to work weird hours or something like that, that's fine. Just create the habit first. Number 2, I've never even heard of anyone who moves as much as Goggins. So lots of daily movements. And movement keeps energy, focus, and decision-making sharp to the point where if you're trying to think of how to manage all these things in your schedule, your work performance is directly affected by your health and your energy levels. And not just conceptually speaking, because I'm a guy who's interested in this topic, but presenteeism is literally the #1 cause of workplace loss in America. Absenteeism is you don't show up to work. Presenteeism is you're at work, not totally doing your job because you're distracted, you're not focused, you're not being productive. And that is the #1 cost. So if you can avoid having issues with presenteeism, you're going to be more productive, you're going to get more done, you're going to get that promotion. And if you get promoted far enough, then you don't really have to go to work as much, which is a pretty cool thing. Now, you modify what Goggins does. I don't recommend exercising for 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Reduce that time and increase the intensity massively. Short, high-intensity intervals, like a 4-second sprint repeated over and over, much better than a long slog. Not just from a making it work for your life perspective, but genuinely from a metabolic and physiological perspective. Your muscle fiber composition will be healthier. Your long-term prognosis to be healthy will be better, and you'll be better off for it. My best recommendation would be allocate 5 to 10 minutes a day of interval training where you spend at least a few efforts at maximum intensity, and then do a resistance training session where, honestly, if you went and you did 5 sets to failure per day, per body part, you would make tremendous progress for the everyday person. If you want to be a world champion, you got to do a lot more than that. But if you just want to be healthy, strong, and fit, that's a pretty reasonable place to start. Habit number 3 with Goggins. He breaks up his workouts. He'll do a morning workout, an afternoon workout, an evening workout. I think this is great. And to me, this is the answer of should I do cardio first or should I do resistance training first? I think personally, the more you can split them up, the better. It gives you a chance to refuel and reset. So practically speaking, I would say 1 HIIT session and 1 lifting session separated is great. Do not feel the need to literally train all day. So look, Goggins has earned the right to train the way he trains. In fact, everyone has the right to train the way that they want to train. It doesn't always tell you that it's the most effective thing. For Goggins, he's accomplished some incredible things, so it's effective for his goals. It will not be effective for your goals. Frankly, he is built differently, mentally and physically. He has totally different objectives than anyone I've ever met, but it works for him. Your routine should reflect your goals. It should support them and not sabotage them, not drive you into the ground. So if you want to get stronger and feel better, build a routine that actually fits your life. Now, if you want a synopsis and a good idea of where your sympathetic fatigue is at, because that's going to be the #1 thing that you are going to struggle with when it comes to structuring your daily routine, getting in your exercise and getting in all your other obligations, along with your sleep, and go through all of those sleep hygiene things that I talked about. I have a link to that free PDF down in the description, 100% free. You can score yourself, and based on that score, it's going to tell you it's time for a deload, it's time to continue on, or it's time to push hard and set some PBs. So go ahead, check that out, and assess your own daily routine. See if that's working for you or against you. The link is below. Go ahead and grab it. And remember, you don't need to live like Goggins to change your life. You just need the right plan. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, lift heavy, be kind. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment down below what you think of Goggins' daily routine. And if you have any hacks for your own daily routines, I would love to see those as well. Until tomorrow, guys, lift heavy, be kind, and thank you very much for watching.